Welcome to the Poetry Podcast with A, an Amber Michelle's work production. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 1 of the Poetry Podcast with A. That's me. And I'm just really excited because if you can't already tell from my tone of voice, I'll say it out loud. I am freaking pumped to be recording this episode because this is just a really big new start in my life of recording Season 2. I do have Season 1 of the Poetry Podcast with A, which I do on this episode want to give a background story to. I want to update everyone on where this podcast has been, what I've been up to, and why I'm launching Season 2 and just the purpose behind it. Kind of giving everyone an introduction on who I am because I actually never did that in Season 1. So pretty much this season is just filled with more professionalism, more consistency of running and producing the podcast. So with season going all the way back and starting to the reason why I even started a podcast in the first place, that's really where I want to start. Is I started this because I was really, I'm like trying to think of the reason why, and I'll just be extremely honest, which is embarrassing, is I just wanted more content. I have started Amber Michelle's poetry page or Amber Michelle poetry page. And when I started that, I was kind of sometimes running out of content ideas. And I was doing my best to think of ideas, but I just wanted more. So I came up with this concept called The Pop-Up, where I would interview other writers, poets, authors, and give them a platform to speak on. And not only was it giving them the chance to have a platform to share their story, but it was also giving me an opportunity to learn from some of the best storytellers in town. I feel like. So that was the conception of just like I wanted to create more content, and I also wanted to surround myself in a community that was super diverse in terms of all different types of writers. And it's kind of funny because it didn't really work out that way. Because then I ended up in the long run just switching to a full new Instagram and brand name for the podcast. So on that poetry page, I was actually never even utilizing more posts on that. I just ended up starting a whole new podcast. So even though that was the purpose behind that first series of podcasts, I call it actually my pilot podcast because I was doing it to get more content because I was launching a book. I was launching my first debut book called Seasons of Sobriety, and I just needed to create traction on this poetry page to hopefully sell books, which I mainly just sold books through my personal community, meeting face to face. I am such a meet you in person, let's connect one-on-one rather than trying to connect through media. I'm doing my best, and this is a journey to connect through media because I know it's just the world we live in nowadays. But it isn't the most natural. I am just someone who really loves to connect in person. So when I was launching that book, I created this podcast, and I'm calling it my pilot podcast because I didn't know if I was necessarily going to like running a podcast. I absolutely knew that I knew how to run it. I know how to produce podcasts. And that is because for the past 6 years, I have been running a video production company with my sister called Stellar Image Studios. And so I knew how to do all the steps. I know how to record audio. Like right now, I'm recording this on my couch. This is where these episodes will be recorded for most of them, but not for when I do interviews with people. But there's a lawnmower outside. And y'all won't even know because I'm good at editing audio and I'm good at editing video. That's just who I am. That's what I've done for my career. So putting it into a podcast format was actually quite easy for me, but I just didn't know if I was going to like it. And it turns out I ended up loving it, which might not be reflected in season 1 because of the limited amount of episodes, but it was not about if I liked doing the podcast. It was about the timing. Everything in this life has to be based on timing or else it just won't work out. And it really was the wrong time for me when I started it. And this is the reason why. So I was starting it because I had a book launch. My book came out for the first time. I bought a house during that time. I found out I was pregnant during that time. So I'm still pregnant. That's why I just put my hand to my belly with like a little creepy smile on my face, like there's a child in here. So I found out I was pregnant, moved into a new house, and then I also had to figure out what I was going to be doing with my career because owning the video production company has been my life for the past 6 years, and it's absolutely been wonderful. I love the brand of Stellar Image Studios. I had fallen in love with my employees. I've fallen in love with the clients, and I had to make a decision of there was something just not fitting right in my life. And through a lot of meditation, deep prayer, reflection, I realized that I needed to move on from that company, and I ended up selling my shares very recently. And I'm going to be working there up until my due date, which is November 2nd, but I'm really hoping for a Halloween baby. So I'm going to be working there full time until then. And then that's when the transition will really happen. So making that decision, when you're making a decision that is life impacting, it takes all your energy. So like this baby inside of me for the first 3 months, my trimester, I was sick every single day. And then also making this huge life-changing decision with my career, it was also taking a ton of mental capacity. So trying to run the podcast as well just wasn't fitting in. And even though I loved it, I just wasn't making time for it. But that is now changing. I'm switching priorities in my life. And one of my priorities is going to be this podcast because I'm at a place in my life where I'm only going to be focusing on things that I absolutely love. And I want to give those loves like I did for the company Stellar Image Studios for the past 6 years. I gave everything I had into that company. And now I want to be doing it with this new brand, with starting this writing career in these writing pursuits and also raising my family. I can really only focus on so much at once. And those are the two things that are going to be high up on my priority now. So I'm not getting away from film forever. I still will be a consultant, work on things here and there, but it's just like not the topmost. That's why I had to take a step back. It's not the top priority anymore. Like these other things are going to be coming up in my life. So I think it's just really important to share what happened with my first season because it was actually titled The Pop-Up and it wasn't on Spotify or Apple until recently. Its home was YouTube and it worked great, but I just wasn't fully able to have space, energy, time to give it my all. So I have recently put season 1 on Spotify and Apple. If you haven't listened to season 1, there are some amazing episodes. I would say season 1, episode 2 with Mary Mendoza. I love that episode because it's talking very vulnerably with a musician, which I think musicians and poetry really correlate. And then also, I love season 1, episode 4 as well, because that's with a poet, and he just has a certain type of reflection that I felt like I learned so much from that episode. And just the way that he observes and takes in life was beautifully put by him. So those would be the 2 episodes I'd recommend. I feel like one is like me shooting the shit with some friend, with a friend, because that's really what it is. We're best friends. And I've fallen in love with her writing for ever since I've met her in high school. I have been obsessed with her lyrics. And then also with episode 4 with Jose Faust, when I moved into Kansas City for the first time, he was one of the first people I met who was a poet and just gave me so much inspiration. So those would be the 2 episodes I would recommend in season 1 to start. Then moving forward to this future of now, okay, so actually let me go back and just comment on season 1. So it was titled The Pop-Up, and now it's titled The Poetry Podcast with A, because we are rebranding. We are going to be more consistent. We are producing more episodes, and it's just going to be more official. The podcast will be a true podcast. It will not be a pilot podcast. It will be full, the whole damn shebang of producing podcasts. So right now, where I'm at with the Poetry Podcast with A, and this is what it is for right now, I say, and not like forever, because I think that things have evolution, things evolve. So this is how I feel that the podcast is going to be running for, let's just say, the next 6 months, but it might change. It might change tomorrow. I might have an idea and run with it. So how it's going to be run is that the first 3 Thursdays of the month, I'll be putting out an episode. So the first episode, it will be similar to this vibe of me commenting on trends, and if there's like a question or something that I've learned within the industry, I'll be talking on it. It'll be a semi-short podcast. I'm going to say like 20 to 30 minutes max. The second episode, I'm going to be doing reviews on what I'm reading, whether that be a certain newspaper, a book, a blog, anything like that. I'm just going to be reviewing it. And then I'm also going to be doing some readings about highlighting my guest, which will be on the last episode of the month, where I will bring back in that pop-up feel. So I will still call that episode the pop-up, where I'm going out in the community, interviewing and chatting with local writers, poets, authors, and learning something new from them. That's like my favorite freaking part, is that we will all get to learn from these amazing storytellers out there. And I think for this first season, or this second season of season 2, I'll be focusing on local writers, and then hopefully evolving into writers all around the world. That would be my dream. So that really sums up the history of where the Poetry Podcast with A started, where it's at right now, and then where we're going to go. So next week, I'm going to be focusing on a book review and highlighting the poet of the month, author of the month, writer of the month. And I can't wait, because that woman that I interviewed is absolutely amazing. Like, she is one of, I know I said Jose Faust was one of the first people that inspired me, and he was, but she was a close second, like they're tied. I met them very similar. Like I met them at the same time, maybe a week apart from each other. And I was like, holy shit, Kansas City has the best poets I've ever met. So that is someone that I'm going to be highlighting next. And I'll save who that is for next episode when I do a little highlight on her. So make sure to tune back in next Thursday. I can't wait to chat with you then. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. Leave me a review on your favorite listening channel, Spotify, Apple, or YouTube. I'd love to hear from you. Always with love, A.